Marcus Steele gripped the straps of his worn backpack as he stepped out of the cab and onto the bustling sidewalk outside the gleaming glass tower that housed his company's headquarters. The city buzzed with life, taxis honked, and people streamed past him in a blur of hurried purpose, oblivious to the man walking among them. Marcus drew a deep breath, feeling a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Today, he wasn't Marcus Steele, the CEO, the man whose name appeared in glossy magazines and whose decisions could move millions of dollars. Today, he was just Marcus, a supposed intern stepping into a world he had only ever seen from a penthouse office. He paused at the revolving door, brushing a hand over the plain gray hoodie that concealed the designer suit he had shed like a second skin. The jeans he wore felt strangely liberating after years of tailored trousers, and the worn sneakers gave him an odd sense of anonymity. For weeks, he had meticulously crafted this disguise, choosing an outfit that would make him blend in without attracting attention, and rehearsing a casual, approachable demeanor that he hoped would pass muster. He adjusted the straps of the backpack again and pushed through the door, the cool, conditioned air of the lobby washing over him like a shock of reality. At the reception desk, a young woman glanced up from her computer. "Good morning. Can I help you?" she asked, her voice bright but professional. Marcus smiled, trying to appear unremarkable. "Hey, I'm Marcus. I'm here for the internship program," he said, giving her the name he had been given for this week's cover identity. The woman typed a few keys and looked up again. "Great, you're on the list. Orientation starts in 10 minutes in the conference room down the hall." She handed him a visitor badge, and he pinned it awkwardly to his hoodie, feeling conspicuous despite his efforts to seem casual. As he walked toward the conference room, Marcus couldn't help but notice the details he had missed before. The hum of printers in the corner, the faint smell of coffee mixed with paper and cleaning solution, and the constant low chatter of employees moving between desks. This was the lifeblood of the company, the engine that kept everything running while he spent his days in board meetings and investor calls. He felt a strange thrill in seeing it up close, in being just another cog for a change. It was a level of intimacy he had never allowed himself before, and it made the office feel both familiar and completely foreign at the same time. Inside the conference room, a dozen interns shuffled awkwardly in their seats. Marcus found an empty chair at the back, careful not to draw attention to himself. Across the room, a program coordinator began the standard orientation spiel, outlining rules, procedures, and expectations. Marcus nodded along, pretending to scribble notes while internally analyzing the culture through a lens he rarely used, the lens of someone who actually worked on the front lines. He observed how some interns fidgeted nervously, glancing at their neighbors, while others sat confidently, as if they had already claimed their place in this ecosystem. He realized that despite the company's reputation for excellence, the individuals here were human, nervous, ambitious, eager to impress, and, in some cases, quietly anxious about whether they would survive their first week. After orientation, Marcus was handed his first assignment, a stack of administrative tasks that ranged from organizing files to preparing a spreadsheet for a team project. At first, he felt the familiar itch of impatience. He was a CEO, after all, and he was used to delegating menial tasks. But then he reminded himself of the purpose of this experiment. He couldn't just observe, from a distance. He had to experience the daily grind, to immerse himself in the rhythm of his staff's lives. With a resigned smile, he rolled up his sleeves and got to work, feeling a curious sense of humility settle over him. As he worked, he started noticing nuances he had overlooked in his leadership role. The office equipment was often unreliable, printers jammed at the worst possible moments, and software occasionally crashed, sending flurries of frustrated sighs from the staff. The interns, however, adapted quickly, finding workarounds and supporting one another without complaint. Marcus watched as one young woman lent a hand to another struggling with a form, offering quiet encouragement and patient guidance. In that small moment, he realized that much of the company's success wasn't driven by policies or directives. It was propelled by the invisible, unheralded acts of teamwork happening every day. During a break, he wandered toward the kitchenette, grabbing a cup of lukewarm coffee. Other interns clustered around, chatting about classes, hobbies, and their impressions of the company. Marcus joined in, contributing small comments and listening more than he spoke. He was struck by how genuine these interactions were, unfiltered by corporate expectations or hierarchical pressure. For the first time, he saw the humanity behind the company's impressive facade. Not the polished brand, not the quarterly reports, but real people working hard, laughing quietly, and supporting one another through minor crises. By the end of the day, Marcus felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. He returned the stack of completed tasks to the coordinator, who gave him a polite nod of approval, oblivious to who he truly was. As he walked back to his temporary desk, he paused and looked around at the bustling office from a fresh perspective. This was the world he had created, yet somehow it felt larger, more complex, and far more fragile than he had ever imagined. He understood, perhaps for the first time, that leadership wasn't just about making decisions from above. It was about noticing, understanding, and valuing the people who made those decisions possible. Marcus smiled to himself, realizing that this experiment would change not just his understanding of the company, but the way he would lead it in the days to come. Marcus arrived at the office the next morning with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Today, he wasn't here to oversee projects from a distance or issue directives from his glass-walled office. He was here to observe, to learn, and to experience the inner workings of his company from the ground level. His first task of the day was to assist the IT department with a backlog of minor troubleshooting requests. Marcus had always been confident in his technological savvy as a CEO, but sitting in a cubicle surrounded by humming servers, tangled cables, and blinking monitors reminded him how much he had depended on others for the details. As he helped an intern reinstall software for a flustered employee, he watched quietly as a senior engineer patiently explained the steps. The engineer's calm demeanor masked a constant stream of problem-solving in his mind, and Marcus realized he had never noticed the subtle expertise his staff wielded on a daily basis. It was one thing to know the results, but another entirely to see the process, the small improvisations and adjustments that made success possible. Marcus began to jot down mental notes, amazed by how much invisible labor went into maintaining even the most mundane systems. After lunch, Marcus was assigned to assist the marketing team with preparing a presentation for an important client. He sat at a desk crowded with colorful mock-ups, charts, and sticky notes, trying to keep pace with the fast-moving conversation. The marketing assistant, a young woman named Clara, was calm and organized, delegating tasks and troubleshooting on the fly. Marcus marveled at how she managed not only the technical details but also the morale of the group, offering encouragement when someone made a mistake and gently correcting errors without diminishing confidence. He realized that the effectiveness of the team was as much about interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence as it was about technical expertise. During a brief coffee break, Marcus found himself observing a group of interns discussing a particularly tricky software glitch. One of them, clearly frustrated, muttered about deadlines and the impossibility of fixing the problem on time. Without missing a beat, another intern offered a suggestion, and a collaborative discussion followed. Marcus noted the creativity, the initiative, and the quiet leadership that emerged from unexpected places. This wasn't a hierarchy imposed from the top. It was an ecosystem, a self-organizing network of people invested in solving problems, often without anyone noticing. Marcus continued his day shadowing employees in various departments, from HR handling delicate scheduling conflicts to operations staff navigating supply chain bottlenecks. In each scenario, he saw dedication, resilience, and ingenuity in action. Employees who never spoke up in meetings made critical decisions on the fly. Those who seemed quiet carried heavy loads, keeping projects on track. Marcus began to feel a mixture of awe and humility. Here were the people who made his strategies actionable, who turned his ideas into reality, and he had spent years taking much of it for granted. In the afternoon, Marcus was sent to assist a software engineer on debugging a critical piece of code. Sitting side by side, he watched as the engineer's fingers flew across the keyboard, eyes scanning lines of code with precision and focus. The engineer explained the logic behind his approach, and Marcus realized that what looked like routine work from above was actually an exercise in constant creativity and problem-solving. Every decision carried weight, and the margin for error was slim. Marcus tried to contribute, but the complexity quickly humbled him. He understood, in a way he never had before, the intellectual labor and pressure his staff endured daily, often without recognition. Toward the end of the day, Marcus found himself in a quiet corner, observing a small team preparing for an internal project review. One employee noticed a minor mistake in a spreadsheet and immediately corrected it, then discreetly explained the fix to a colleague. Another noticed a formatting inconsistency and took the time to adjust it, all while maintaining the flow of their work. Marcus felt a surge of admiration. These small, often invisible acts accumulated to create a seamless, functioning system. It dawned on him that leadership wasn't simply about setting a vision, it was about fostering an environment where people could take initiative, support each other, and excel quietly. As he walked back to his temporary desk, Marcus reflected on what he had seen. He had come expecting to find flaws, inefficiencies, and perhaps complacency. Instead, he found commitment, creativity, and teamwork that exceeded even his highest expectations. He realized that the strength of his company lay not just in his strategic decisions, but in the hearts, minds, and hands of his employees, who had been quietly keeping the organization alive and thriving. The experience left him speechless in a way no boardroom briefing ever had, instilling a deep respect for the people he led and a newfound determination to see them, value them, and support them in ways he never had before. By the time Friday afternoon rolled around, Marcus felt a mixture of exhaustion, exhilaration, and something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine anticipation. This final day of his undercover experiment was different. He had settled into the rhythm of the office, grown accustomed to the minor frustrations, the uncelebrated victories, and the intricate web of relationships that made the company function. Today, he was assigned to assist the customer service team, a group he had long admired from afar but never truly understood. He walked into the open-plan space, a cacophony of ringing phones, clacking keyboards, and hushed conversations filling the air. He was paired with Jordan, a senior customer support specialist, who was responsible for handling some of the most challenging client complaints. Marcus watched as Jordan calmly listened to a frustrated client over the phone, responding with patience and empathy while typing notes at lightning speed. What struck him most wasn't just Jordan's technical proficiency, but the emotional labor, the careful modulation of tone, the reassurance woven into every word, the subtle ways he diffused tension while keeping the client satisfied. Marcus had sat through quarterly reports where customer satisfaction metrics were discussed, but metrics alone had never conveyed the weight of this work, the constant balancing act required to maintain both client trust and team morale. As he assisted with data entry and ticket management, Marcus began to notice the quiet, almost imperceptible ways the team supported each other. One employee caught an error another had made in a client's profile and corrected it without drawing attention. Another offered a tip on navigating a particularly tricky software issue. Marcus realized that what looked like individual effort from above was actually a complex, interdependent network of collaboration. Each small action had a ripple effect, creating a system that functioned smoothly despite the inevitable hiccups of daily operations. Midway through the day, Marcus was sent to help prep materials for an internal presentation. As he moved through the office, he overheard conversations that made him pause. A group of engineers was discussing an upcoming project deadline, voices hushed but intense. They spoke openly about mistakes they had made, solutions they had tried, and the stress of balancing multiple priorities. Marcus noted the honesty, the willingness to share failures and ask for help, a stark contrast to the polished reports he received in the executive suite. These were not employees trying to impress, these were people genuinely invested in the work and in supporting one another to succeed. The turning point came in the late afternoon, when a minor crisis erupted in the operations department. A supplier had made an error that could delay a major client delivery. Marcus watched as the team scrambled to assess the situation, contacting colleagues, adjusting schedules, and brainstorming solutions. The calm coordination and problem-solving were awe-inspiring. Marcus realized that while he had always thought of himself as the orchestrator, the real mastery lived in these everyday acts of initiative and intelligence. The employees didn't wait for his approval, they adapted, improvised, and executed with precision. After the crisis was averted, Marcus sat quietly at his temporary desk, reflecting on the week. He had come expecting to witness flaws, to see inefficiencies, to validate his assumptions about where things might be going wrong. Instead, he had encountered something far more profound. A culture of dedication, resilience, and quiet excellence. He thought of the engineer who stayed late to perfect a feature because he believed in it, the marketing assistant who diffused client tension with unwavering calm, and the customer service team that managed emotional labor with grace and precision. Each person had contributed to the company's success in ways metrics could never capture, often without recognition or fanfare. That evening, Marcus returned to his office, removed the hoodie and jeans, and changed back into his tailored suit, but the experience had left an indelible mark. He called an all-hands meeting, gathering the employees he had observed all week. Standing in front of them, he allowed himself to pause and absorb the energy in the room, the subtle connections, the camaraderie, the quiet confidence. He spoke from the heart, praising their dedication, creativity, and teamwork. He didn't yet reveal that he had been among them all week, but he made it clear that he now saw and understood their efforts in a way he never had before. The room went silent, then erupted in applause, some puzzled, some deeply touched, all moved by the sincerity in his voice. Later, in the solitude of his office, Marcus reflected on the transformation within himself. Leadership, he realized, wasn't about issuing commands or focusing solely on metrics. It was about observing, listening, and valuing the people who made everything possible. He understood that the strength of a company didn't lie in its strategy documents or annual reports, but in the hands, minds, and hearts of the people who carried out the work day after day. That week Undercover had stripped away titles, ego, and assumptions, revealing the human foundation that supported every success. For Marcus, it was a revelation both humbling and empowering, leaving him speechless, not because of what he had seen, but because of what he had learned to truly see.